Yo, we're on live. We're actually recording now.
Oh my God, months of planning and this finally happened.
Bro,
My God,
months of
I'm about to
planning,
cry.
and we finally got the episode out. Well, what is up, you guys?
Hopefully we get this
Welcome.
out.
Welcome to the Split Decision Podcast. I'm Elias Blanco, and with me is my boy, my dog, my brother, Nate Marrero. We are going to be doing this every week. Nate, how are you doing today?
I am doing well. I'm glad this has finally gone out of the freaking iMessages to actually happening. We
Yeah,
were
dude.
off by a semester hitting the field, and now, here we are, finally talking about boxing.
Yeah, bro.
About
We've
time.
literally talked about this like beginning of the year, and then like it's already almost the end of August, and we
Oh my
finally got the
God.
first episode out.
Yeah, time
Uh,
flies.
think about it like this: our first episode we were supposed to plan was like Fury and Usyk, and
Yeah, or no, we were trying to do like Crawford, Madrimov, and then life is funny, and it can be a bit of a pain a lot of the
bro,
time. But
bro, we were supposed to. So I work at a news station, and Nate came up to Tallahassee with the plan of going in studio to
yeah,
talk
for
about
Frank
the
Martin
company.
versus a Tank.
Yes, we were supposed to talk about that, and that ended up not happening. We ended up
Yeah,
kind of doing something else, which it was good experience for us, but
it
it is
was.
what
Yeah,
it
it
is.
was really good.
But listen, enough with the chit chat, enough with the small talk. Let's get straight into it. We're talking boxing. We're talking about this past weekend, and there might be a new contender at 168 because in the main event, Christian and Billy beat Sergey Derevyanchenko in the main event by unanimous decision. Nate, give me your initial thoughts on this fight. I mean, a lot of people were calling for him to fight Canelo. He was known as the biggest threat to Canelo now that David Benavidez and David Morrell are out of 168. So give me your thoughts on
Mhm.
his performance.
I thought it was. It's just tough because obviously Derevyanchenko getting hurt, tearing his bicep. It's hard to get like a complete It's hard to feel like you got like a complete result in a way. I mean, I thought he looked good. I mean, it was easiest, toughest test to date, and he won pretty much every round. There's just like so it was a good one. He did what he had to do. I just have my doubts about like if he does eventually fight Canelo or even like some of the other guys that we'll get to later, Osleys, Iglesias. I just feel like his style is kind of. Once he fights like the upper echelon guys, I feel like he's gonna get solved. He's just like he's too reliant on his physical strength, and once he fights guys that like know how to like handle that or like maneuver around, they'll be able to hold him off. Like Derevyanchenko couldn't do because he had one arm basically from the fourth or fifth round on, and so if he had two functioning arms, who knows how that fight would have played out. But it's a good win. It's a step in the right direction, and I don't know if he should be in line to fight Canelo, but given that this track record of Canelo fighting guys he feels really good that he can beat, he may very well be in line for that fight. But we'll see. A step in the right direction, but I still want to see more out of him before I view him as like a guy who can hold his own with the best of the best at 168.
Yeah, and I think my thing with him is that, we were talking about this leading up to the fight. We were talking about like 168 looks really different now, especially
Mhm.
like you see how different it looks now that David Benavidez and David Morrell are
Yeah,
both out of the Ring Magazine rankings. I mean, granted, like the rankings shouldn't be the end all be all, but it is the most credible out of all the sanctioning bodies and stuff
yeah,
like that. It looks crazy, and now that Mbilli's at the top of it behind Canelo, I was really I was really hoping for a lot. You know what I mean? Everybody was
hmm
talking about him as a monster puncher. He looks like $1 million. It's just
yeah,
he there's a difference between being a power puncher, a hard hitter, and just being a strong fighter. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Strength doesn't always translate to
hmm
power. And I think that's what you saw there. Like he was throwing with a lot of force, a lot of aggression, but he really couldn't get Sergey Derevyanchenko down. And I think that's what the big thing is with me is I think that, especially when he was like a little bit in trouble or when he felt like, he was kind of off his game plan or he was feeling a little bit of pushback from Sergey, he still stayed with the same game plan. And I think when you fight the upper echelon or the top of the top at 168, you have to have different game plans. And I think for him, I think just him keep trying to push it, trying to bully his way on the inside and stuff like that, that's not going to work against a guy who's really, really smart. I mean, Derevyanchenko is smart, but he is closer to 40 than he is to his
Yeah,
prime.
he's 38. Yeah,
Exactly. And
he was hurt.
he fought him injured,
Yeah,
he got injured in the fight. So imagine if he fights a guy like Canelo or even a guy like Osleys Iglesias, who we will get to in a little bit.
yeah,
Someone will expose that, and that's my only thing. I think overall, I think it was an impressive performance because he still dominated the fight through 10 rounds. So like, let's
yeah.
not get that like confused. Like he still
Mhm.
dominated the fight, but was I impressed? Was I like, oh, this guy's next for Canelo? Yes, but not in the good way, not in the good,
Yeah,
not
no.
the cherry pick way.
More of like he fits what Canelo's doing at this point in his career. Don't get me wrong, like Canelo is like he's going to be in the Hall of Fame and stuff like that. Just this like stage he's entering his career, it's just kind of aggravating because like David Benavidez and David Morrell may very well be the if they were still at 168, they may very one of those two are probably maybe the best in that division. But since Canelo has shown no interest in fighting them, they've chosen to move up to 175.
Yeah, I don't know. I just, the big thing with me is that I think with Mbilli or with Mbilli, I think, he has to he has to fight outside of Canada. I mean, he at this
Yeah, for
point,
sure.
I think this point, he's been so comfortable fighting in Canada with, Eye of the Tiger, that's his promotion. I
Hmm.
think, I get it. He has a big fan base there, and that's where, the most money's made for him. But he has to branch out. They have to branch out, fight in the States, fight overseas and stuff like that. He's originally from France, but Canada is where his residence is at. And I think
Yeah.
too, just like, he's so protected. And I think,
Hmm.
with him being that protected, how much is he really growing? How are you
Hmm.
maximizing his development as a boxer? And that's my only issue with him right now after watching this past performance. I mean, we only, you know, boxing is very recency bias. So, you're only as good as your last fight. And I think
Yeah.
right now, I'm not fully sold on him.
No, I'm not either. I know Tim Bradley was like, "Oh, Canelo's gonna stay away from him." I'm like, I don't know. Like, don't get me wrong, like he did what he had to do, but it's just I'm still want to see more out of him. He's got to show more layers to his game. Like his answer to, if he forces if he meets any resistance, his answer to that problem can't be like, "Oh, well, I'm just gonna start throwing harder and trying harder." When you meet the guys that are much more nuanced, that's gonna be a problem. I also didn't like that it was a 10-round fight. I don't know. I feel like if you're going to eventually be fighting for a belt, you should be fighting 12-round fights, especially if, well, he's number one in the WBC now. So eventually he could be enforced as a mandatory. Like, I feel if you're in like a de facto title eliminator, like you should be scheduled for what a full title bout would be.
Yeah, man. And I think, Eye of the Tiger has some big names, you know what I mean? I think and
Mhm.
Billy's the top guy. I think he's their best name at it on that promotion. But one guy that I think is probably their best overall fighter is Osleys Iglesias. And he actually fought on the undercard of Christian and Billy. He defeated Senna Agbeko by second round stoppage, man. Nate, tell me about this because this was like very impressive. Beko's a tough guy, a tough dude, and Iglesias made it look fairly easy, man.
Yeah, he'd never been dropped before, and just Iglesias just it feels like he just has like a different kind of power. You don't go like 12-0 with 11 knockouts on accident. He's been fighting like decent guys, like I think his name is Marcelo Caceres. He gave Berlanga like one of his toughest fights, won 10 rounds, and Iglesias blew him out in the first round. And then Agbeka, who had never been dropped before, just got absolutely steamrolled by Iglesias. So I mean, he's got a different kind of power. He's also very like physically imposing. At 6'2", and he's a southpaw. I mean, that guy is. I mean, I definitely want to see how he does against the upper echelon type of guys. And I think he might be ready for them too. I don't know if there's any reason to wait. He does have time on his side. He's 26. I mean, him against Mbilli would make a lot of sense. I don't think either Tiger would want to pit their top two guys against each other. But I don't know. I'd love to see it. Hopefully, they are willing to do that. I mean, I was much more impressed with Iglesias. He's shown me a lot more. Like he kind of the nuance we talk about from Billy. He's kind of shown that he does a good job coming out the ring. He knows how to use his size, and he's got a different type of power from the looks of it.
Yeah, and what's crazy too is we talked about this, man, and I was just like, I was telling you, I was like, yo, I need you to look at him because for some reason I need you to see if I'm seeing something different because like I wasn't sold on him. I was telling you, I
Hmm.
was like, dude, like I'm just watching him and like he has a very Cuban-esque style. I mean, obviously he's very technical, very
Yeah,
smart. But like I was like, dude, he has really good upper body movement, but his freaking feet look like quicksand. Like them
yeah.
things look like they're like wonky. They like bend in. I was like, bro,
Hmm.
like if he turns the wrong way, that man's getting caught. But like, man, that performance, I think the first knockdown he caught him with, oh my gosh,
That right hook was devastating.
he didn't see it coming. He didn't see it. Senna literally didn't see it coming. Like he was backing up and it was coming from behind his ear. There's no way to see it. There's literally no
Yeah.
way to see it. And like,
That angle for orthodox fighters is just tough too, because like with the just in the way naturally, with your right hand, like that lead hand battle, if you can know how to throw it the right way, it can be. It's just tough to see, and like the punches you don't see are the ones that hurt the most.
yeah, and I definitely think he made a believer out of me. I
Hmm.
think whatever kind of criticism or whatever kind of initial thoughts I had of him, he definitely shut me up like quickly. And that brings me to my
Hmm.
next point, and I really want to bring this up. Is Osleys Iglesias the best boxer at 168? Now we can bring Canelo into this, we can exclude him. I don't care. My answer is still the same. But is
Hmm.
he the best boxer at super middleweight right now?
I don't know if I want to say he's the best. I'm very high on him. I think when it's all said and done, like if he gets those fights against the top guys, he may very well be that guy. I'm still a couple fights away where I want to see him fight, maybe fight a Caleb Plant, maybe fight a Boo Boo Andrade, Andre. So I would want to see him against those type of fighters. Who knows if they even want to go near him at this point? But I don't know if I'm quite ready to say like. Don't get me wrong. I was like, I don't know. I was kind of high on him from the beginning, but I don't know if I'd go that far. I'm gonna pump the brakes just a little bit. But he has all the potential in the world. I think. I don't know. How do you feel about him?
Listen, I'll tell you this right now. He is no, not yet, but he is
He's
close.
on his way.
Especially
He's on his way.
he's pretty much there. I think the only reason why he's not there is because I'm not fully sold. Just because he got to the higher ranking because the second and third best super middleweight moved up in weight. So I
Hmm.
can't fully be sold on that, but like he is either number 2 or number 3. I'm more sold on him now than ever, and I think he gives Canelo a harder test than Mbilli does. Now that's saying a lot,
Oh, for
but
sure.
it's really a testament of how skilled Osleys Iglesias is, man. And
Mhm.
I think too, he if either Tiger promotes him right, he might be the guy that brings them a world champion. I think he's that guy who brings them the world title. Honestly, what do you think about that?
I think so. I think he would most definitely be a tougher fight for Canelo than Mbilli. I mean, he's 6'2", and like he can freaking crack, and he's a southpaw as well, and just like all those layers to his game, like he's a tough out, and he's got legit like one punch knockout power, which is like just naturally fighting a bigger southpaw is tough. But then you add the his ability to put your lights out with one shot, like that's. Oof, I don't think Canelo would go near him. I don't.
Yeah, and he's again like I said, I think he is one guy that is gonna be avoided. I think for his counterpart Christian and Billy, I mean Tim Bradley's like, oh yeah, he's definitely gonna be a boogeyman. I'm not sure yet. I am not sure. I actually think he's gonna get more opportunities after this performance with Sergey Derevanchenko. And that brings me to the next question: is what's next for Christian and Billy, man? Because he had this fight. This was his honestly not only his toughest fight, but his most high profile fight in his career. I mean,
Mhm.
he's kind of fought, kind of I won't say cans, but he's fought guys that has made his record look good. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
this was
he's
his first real contender, someone who fought Triple G, someone who fought Jamal Charlo, someone who was a
mhm.
real title contender at one point. And he did like even though he didn't get the finish, he still won in pretty comfortable fashion. So honestly, what do you think is next for him?
Oof. Oh man, if I had to, I'm not sure because it's also like because of the politics of boxing is like who's like really viable, like who can he really get in the ring with. Some guy someone I think that would be a good step up would be I think Andre would be a good step up for him just to see someone that's going to be able to box him and stick and move and see if Mbilli's like physically imposing style, if he can, and pressure style, if he can like get him on the ropes and break him down. I feel like it would be a really good contrast in styles, and whether or not that fight actually gets made, I have my doubts. It's boxing. There's much more than just putting two guys that should fight each other against each other. But I feel like that would be a good step in right. If he beats Andre, I would gladly shut up and be much higher on him and say he deserves the Canelo fight. But yeah, until he beats a guy at that level, I would say I don't know, because I'm trying to think, because Sergey's good. I mean, he arguably beat Triple G. He gave Munguia. I mean, that fight against Munguia was a fight of the year candidate. It's just like him getting hurt just like really put a damper on it. Like if Mbilli did this against a healthy Derevyanchenko, like that would have been like I would probably feel much better about this performance. But yeah, I
Yeah,
don't
I
know. Who
don't
do you
know.
think should be next for him?
I don't know. It's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to say because like part of me wants to say Canelo, but I don't want. I want to. I kind of want to. I'm trying to think of it in a business sense, but I also want to think of it as in like as a boxing fan. Like who do I want to see him against? Is obviously the second best guy outside of Canelo, which is Iglesias, but him being in the same banner with him might put a hamper in that. That
Yeah.
being said, it's really tough for me to think because Boo Boo sounds like a great Boo Boo Andre Demetrius Andrade sounds like a great option, but I think he might be going back to middleweight. I think that's what his plan is, and if not,
Mhm.
that would be a great fight. I think that's a former world champion, a former two division world champion, someone
Yeah.
who gives you another little style that you can test yourself against because Boo Boo
Hmm.
is he's kind of slick. He's not really slick, but he's very
Yeah.
smooth and he's very unorthodox. So he's like kind of aggressive, but he also has really good footwork. So that would give him a good test. I honestly think the fight I want to see him in most is against Caleb Plant. That fight right
Hmm.
there, I think, would be the toughest test and really prove if he's a real contender in this division or not. Caleb Plant, I think, even though he's not in the Ring Magazine rankings right now, he's probably the second best super middleweight in the world right now.
Yeah, he's easily top five. It's just
Easily top
inactivity
five.
that has him out of it.
Easily top five, but inactivity has him out of it. But I think he's the second best right now, and I think Mbilli right now, just based on resume, is fringe top five. Based on based on last weekend's performance, I'm not sure yet if he's top five. So if he
Mhm.
fights Caleb Plant and he's actually able to beat Caleb Plant, I will shut my mouth. I will be like, yo, put him in there with Canelo. I think this would be the fight. But that is the next step up because I think going from Derevyanchenko to Canelo, that's a big leap.
Yeah.
Edgar Berlanga is doing that, and everybody's going to see on Independence Day weekend that is why there's levels to this game because that is
Yeah.
stupid. But aside
Hey,
from
don't
that,
talk about my Puerto Rican brethren like that. Man, come on
hey
now.
man, I'm about to censor myself
Nah,
in a second,
nah, I think Canelo should probably run right through him as long as he hasn't slipped.
bro. You're talking about the greatest fighter coming out of the East Coast. Edgar Berlanga
Oh,
said
wait,
that.
whoa. Okay, all
Edgar
right. Yeah,
Berlanga's
he's just
words. Edgar Berlanga said that. But let's get back on track because
his
I don't
words,
want to
not
go off
ours.
the rails talking about this man. But listen, there was one other performance that I want to talk about just quickly. We can hit on it real quick. Guido Villanello stopped Arslanbek Makhmudov in the eighth round with a great performance. Arslanbek's eye looked like a straight horror movie. It looked like CG, how swollen that thing was. That thing was scary. I think that performance from Guido Villanello, I was expecting it if I'm completely honest, because what he did against F.A. Ajagba, the performance he put on, there ain't no way that he wasn't going to do that. But Nate,
Hmm.
what did you think of it?
Super impressive. I mean, he just picked them apart. That was a very impressive. I mean, that the skin on freaking Arcelbeck's, it was starting to fold because how much swelling there was. It was insane. That was a really scary. I'm trying to think of like bad. Like I remember when Fernando Vargas fought Shane Mosley the first time, it was swollen like really bad. I think this might have been worse than that. But yeah, great performance from Guido. He's on his way up. I don't know what his ceiling is. I don't know if it's maybe he finds a way to fight for a belt, or maybe he's. I think at his best, he'll probably be like a very like high level gatekeeper. Maybe
Mhm.
I don't know. I'd like to see him. A fight that would make a lot of sense to me is him versus Jared Anderson next. I feel like that'd be a good
Oh,
like crossroads fight. You know, if Guido can win, he can move his way up. If Jared Anderson can get a solid win, it's a good win for Jared Anderson. He can get his name back to the discussion with
yeah.
the top heavyweights.
Yeah, I definitely think I could definitely see that. And I just think, it's kind of crazy to think is just he looked like he was the B side. He was supposed to be the guy
Mm-hmm.
that was the world beater. You know what I mean? He was the world
Yeah,
beater. Um, I'm talking about Arslan Beck. He was the guy
yeah,
promoted. He was supposed to be like this unstoppable force. I remember the Day of Reckoning card back in December, and they were talking about him like he was this boogeyman, and then he got stopped by Ajit Caballel. And then in that fight, I was like, man, this man has no heart. You know what I mean? He might have a heart, but like he didn't really show it in this one. It's like when he goes through adversity, he doesn't know how to push
mm-hmm.
it into third or fourth gear. And in this fight, I was like, man, like I seen Guido already do that against FA. Even though he lost, he put on a good performance.
Mm-hmm.
He did the same exact thing. He just outworked Arslan Beck, and he
Yeah.
did it from the start of the fight. I think in this one he should be. If he's not in the top 10, he's on the fringe. If he's not in the top
He's
10 of the
close.
heavyweight division, he's on the fringe. You know what I mean? And I agree with you that Jared Anderson is a good option. Another good option would be, I mean, Ajit Caballel. I think
That would be a good fight too. Yeah.
that would be an exciting fight. I think Caballel has a really good style. He's also very smart. Guido
Mm-hmm.
Vianello has a tank, an engine for days. I think just putting that on an undercard, on a Saudi undercard, man, we're
Yeah.
gonna have a good time. I'm telling you, we're gonna have a good
You could
time.
do that in December on the Usyk Fury 2 undercard. That would make plenty of sense. And Caball's fought on those cards before as well.
Yeah, man. I definitely think that this is like this fight right here. I think it was his coming out party because I mean
Mm-hmm.
he had a really good performance against Fa Jagba, but getting a win against Arslanbek Makhmudov, the
Mm-hmm.
guy who's promoted by Eye of the Tiger, who is hosting the event, man, you really took the steam out of that crowd.
Yeah,
But
no, he got a lot of momentum out of that. That was a huge win for him.
but yeah, man. So we have let's let's go on. We talked about this past week's fights, and now we have to get a preview of this week because this week, it might not be the sexiest, it might not be the highest profile, but there's a lot of interesting fights in this happening this week, and it starts on Wednesday with Pro Box. Former world champion Jared Hurd takes on former unified junior middleweight champion Jason Rosario. Honestly, if this was in 2019, 2020, this could have been like a PBC pay-per-view card for some reason. I
Mm-hmm.
think that like the fact that we're getting it on Pro Box, the fact that it's in our home state of Florida, it's very interesting. And it's like they're in different stages of their careers now. They're not at the top like they once were, but they're still two big names. And I think I'm very excited about this. What do you think?
Yeah. No, it's just like I said 5 years ago. Like this is like a great fight. Like it's stylistically, it's a really good matchup. Obviously they're not the guys they used to be. It's kind of I feel like it's a last chance for these two. Like whoever wins this might have a chance to get into discussion again. Like move their way up at 154. So it's gonna be interesting. I mean, whenever you had two guys that used to be world class guys and they're desperate, they need this one. So it could make for a good fight. I think I might lean Hurry just because Rosario is very vulnerable to the body. But Hurd's taking a lot of damage, man. His style used to be it was very fan friendly. But when you take that much damage, it catches up to you at some point. So I mean, it's a weird. They've diminished to the point where it's still going to be a really good fight. I believe.
Yeah, I definitely think it's gonna be. I think it's gonna be a good fight. It's just the real question is this gonna rejuvenate any of their careers? Rosario right now, I don't know. I think he's either on a losing streak or he's been on a
Yeah,
kind of like a skid.
I think he want to fight in the Dominican Republic.
Yes, but
He's,
like his last few, he's been on a skid though. Like he's not like he hasn't been on a
yeah,
winning streak. So it's not, and it's not like he's been 50-50. I think he's like won one out of his last four fights.
yeah, banana.
But
Oh no, he's been making a comeback, but it's been a Dominican Republic, so take that with a couple grains of salt.
yeah,
Um,
I think it's going to be a good fight though. I think
yeah,
honestly,
it'll be entertaining.
I think it'll be entertaining, and it's on a Wednesday. So I don't know, take what you want with that, but it's on a Wednesday. But
Yeah,
another fight that's happening this week. It's actually happening this weekend, and it's the most high-profile fight, and it's not even a pro fight. We are talking about Floyd
oh
Money
my God.
Mayweather versus John Gotti III, the rematch. Now, if you didn't watch the first fight between the first exhibition, it was interesting to say the least.
Yeah,
Ending in a melee inside the ring with both teams getting in the ring, a whole brawl happening, and now we're at this point where we're having a rematch that nobody asked for. Nate, I'm gonna let you do the preview because if I talk
oh,
anymore,
oh
I'm
my God. I don't. My preview is expect another circus. So I don't know. I mean, Floyd's 47. He's making millions of dollars doing these exhibition bouts, as if he wants to. Like, that's his prerogative. Yeah, I don't know. I imagine Floyd's probably just gonna box him for however long he wants to. I wouldn't be surprised if he tries to stop him after what happened in the first fight, and if he tries to stop him and puts his foot on the gas, he probably might be able to get him out of there. I don't know. I'd be lying if I said I've been breaking down John Gotti film to get ready for this, but yeah, I expect another circus, and hopefully there's no melees, but I'm not getting my hopes up.
Yeah, don't get your hopes up because I'm pretty sure like it's gonna be another melee, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I
You know,
mean,
Floyd,
you're
Floyd is
not watching
looking
this for
good.
pure boxing.
Yeah, you for this fight, you're watching more for entertainment, and I understand that.
Yeah.
I love
Hmm.
Floyd to death. Floyd Mayweather is arguably my favorite fighter of all time. It's just really hard to get invested in an exhibition, and it's really hard to get invested in an exhibition where you're fighting a mobster's son. I don't know what I don't know what else I could say about that. I don't know what else I could
Yeah,
like. It's
you're
hard to like get excited about it. It's hard, and it's pay per view. I can't buy that. It's not even a cheap pay per view. It's pretty expensive.
yeah. I mean, they gotta pay Floyd, so I mean, it's not gonna be cheap.
Yeah. Well,
Oh, man,
uh,
that's it.
I'm
Ugh.
I'm not incriminating myself, but I'm not paying for that.
Yeah, no, we're no,
We're,
yeah.
we're
Well,
citizens.
hopefully it's entertaining, and we may or may not recap this depending on what we got planned next week.
No, we're
Oh
definitely
man, what a crap show.
yeah, we're definitely citizens. That's all I'm gonna say. We're definitely
Oh
like
yeah, no, law-abiding citizens for sure.
law abiding citizens. But I'm trying to think about it. But that's the most high profile fight this week. That
Yeah,
is
no,
that
this
that's so crazy. That's the most high profile fight. But another fight that's happening this week, and I think we can just touch on this real quick. Chris Colbert's back in action. He is fighting, I think, in Philadelphia or something against Nahir Albright. Chris Colbert,
mhm,
man, he was once touted as like a very like a Floyd Mayweather like clone
yeah,
or something like that, like a protege or something.
mhm,
And for the past like three fights, man, he has looked really, really bad. Like it first started, like I think back in 2022 with that loss against Hector Garcia, who was a late replacement in that fight. It started with that, and then the two fights against El Rayo Valenzuela. First one, he pretty much got a decision that most people thought he didn't
yeah.
deserve. And then the second fight, he got knocked out cold in arguably the knockout of that year. What do you think? What do you think about Chris Colbert? What do you think about him being back in action? Are you interested, and do you think he can get back on track?
I don't know if he'll ever end up like in that class at 135, like Shakur, or like Tank. But I mean, Albright's not a pushover, and plus, like for Colbert, like if you look at his losses, I mean, losing to Hector Luis Garcia and Valenzuela, like that's not like horrific. Like those are like looking revisionist history. Like those are two decent names, but yeah. I mean, if he can get a win against Albright, that'd be solid. I mean, Albright's gone. He went to decision against Keyshawn Davis. Well, ended up becoming a no contest for a failed drug test for marijuana, which is pretty dumb this day and age. Anyways, but and then Jermaine Ortiz. So I mean, if Colbert can win, in a definitive fashion, I think that'd be definitely a step in the right direction. But I don't see him ever getting to like that Tank or like Shakur level. I feel like he's probably like his ceiling's probably like a tier below that. But we'll see.
Yeah.
I've been wrong before.
I don't know. I mean, I was a little I wouldn't say I was the highest on him, but I thought he was very marketable, especially when he
Hmm.
was undefeated. I thought that, he was a very slick fighter, a very defensive minded fighter, but that the fight with Hector Garcia really showed that he doesn't have any aggression in him. You know what I mean? He knows how to fight
Yeah.
one style, and if he's in trouble, he doesn't know how to turn on, he doesn't know how to get aggressive or look for the finish.
Hmm.
And that's the biggest thing with me is, I really do like Chris Colbert as a boxer, but when it comes to the nitty gritty, he kind of sometimes he kind of doesn't have a sense of urgency, or sometimes he's like, what's the word? He's not the smartest. I would say that. Like once he's in trouble, he
Yeah.
doesn't have the best IQ.
Hmm.
But I honestly hope he gets back. I always love comeback stories, especially with guys who were once like touted as big like prospects or they're former world champions. I love comeback stories like that. I hope he has one. I hope he, wins in impressive fashion. So that way we can see him back in that limelight. So now, that being said, I think we covered all the fights that are happening this week. There is a couple Japanese cards. We can just hit on them real quick. Yudai Shigioka is back in action. He is the brother of Jinjiro Shigioka. Both of them have lost their strawweight belts. Yudai is now trying to bounce back. I think that's going to be an interesting test for him. So we'll see what happens there. And in that same card, Tomoko Kameda, a very popular name in Japan, he's back in action. I think I'm looking forward to that. Obviously it's in Japan and it's not a high profile fight in Japan, so neither of us will be able to watch it, but there is a boxing page on X that always shows the finishing highlights. So I will be on the lookout for those. Now, that being said, it is now time for a segment that we're going to be doing every single week on this podcast, and it is our shorts. So let's get our shorts ready.
Oh
Nate, you ready?
God. I'm as ready as I'll ever be.
We didn't even talk about this. So like, here's the thing. We didn't even talk about, we talked about what topics, but we didn't prep or nothing. So let me
This might
see
be
if I
really
can do this.
good. This might be really bad.
Shift
We're
6.
about to find
I'm gonna
out.
try to change my screen layout. No, it doesn't work. All right, I'm just
Okay.
gonna go back to the group and call it a day because I'm not trying to mess it up. But
Yeah,
we're
that
gonna
would
go with
be
the first game. First short. This is called Contender or Pretender. Contender or
or
Pretender.
contender.
All right. Is that how you spell it? Let's see. Is this how you spell contender or pretender?
You are correct
All
based on
right.
my
So pretty much
expert
the
eye.
concept of this short, pretty much the concept is we're going to talk about some guys that are either up and coming or that are ranked in the top 10 that are not world champions, and we're going to see if they're the real deal or they're not. So this week we're talking about super middleweights, 168, the division that Canelo Alvarez has reigned over for the past 3 years so far.
Some would
So
say held hostage.
held hostage at this point.
No, I'm
Business
kidding.
wise, the most terrible division. But we're gonna go with it. So first, Nate, you ready?
I'm ready.
So the first name that we are going to discuss, Christian Mbilli. Is he a contender or
Ooh,
a pretender?
I'm gonna say I'm gonna say pretender for now, just because I want to see him win one more fight. If he wins one more fight, I'll change my tune. But who knows? He might just get the Canelo fight regardless. But I'm still want to see him get one big win.
It's kind of crazy to think because like him being him being the second highest ranked super middleweight and him being a pretender, they shouldn't match. But like right
Yeah.
now, I don't like he wasn't impressive against 38-year-old Sergey Derevyanchenko in my eyes, even though he won very
Mhm.
convincingly. I think one more fight, if it's a strong name, I think he'll do the trick. But the next
Yeah.
guy is his stablemate, Osleys Iglesias. Is he a contender or a pretender?
I'll go contender. I don't know. It feels kind of hypocritical based on the body of work. It's like, but I think if you just look at how he's performed and how he's running through these guys, it's like he's definitely got the skills to one day be a champion. I would say I'm much higher on him than I'm Billy for sure.
Yeah, I definitely think I'm higher on him now, especially after watching last week's performance. I think that, he just showed that he has the big thing that he showed is that he had what we thought Mbilli had, and that's like one punch knockout power. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And his looks like out of nowhere. You know what I mean? His
Mhm.
looks it doesn't look like he's hitting people hard, but when you see how they fall to the ground, like one of his fights, one fighter was like convulsing, and it
Yeah.
was kind of crazy. It was kind of worrisome,
Scary. Yeah.
but he's a guy that I think is someone that we should like look at. I think he's going to be a big threat at 168 with Canelo in it or not. He will eventually win a world title. Right now, he actually holds the IBO super middleweight title, which doesn't count as a world title, but it is
Yeah.
pretty impressive that he's still holding that belt.
He's
So
only 12 fights into his career too.
yeah, man, and he stopped everybody but you know one person. So I think that his ceiling is super high.
Yeah.
We're gonna go on to another contender in this division, and we're talking about Matchroom's Diego Pacheco. Is he a contender or pretender, Nate?
Ooh. I think I'm just gonna say I'll say pretender just because I still want to see it. Kind of similar to Billy. Just like I want to see him win a couple fights. He definitely has the ability to one day be among the upper echelon. His fight against Sulecki is going to be a good test. I mean, he's a veteran. He's a let's see, he's fought guys like Andrade and Munguia, so he's going to be able to push him. I think. But if Pacheco can run right through him, then I would probably say he's a contender. Or he'd be fringe contender in my opinion if he can get a good win over Sulecki.
Yeah, I definitely think Pacheco. I won't. I say this with a caveat. I think he's a pretender, but only because like I haven't seen him with the best yet. He's looked really good so far though. He's looked really good with all his performances. It's just, I have to see a little bit more quality in opponent. Maisei Shulecki is the guy that I think is that. I mean, he has fought world champions like Demetrius Andrade. And I think that, this could be a good step up. This is a credible name. This is a title contender. And when you fight a title contender, it usually means that you're in line for a title
Yeah,
next. So
you're getting close. Yeah,
you're getting close. But I'm very high on him. I just I can't call him a true contender yet. And what I mean by contender, contender is someone who really poses a big threat to the world champion. And the world
uh-huh.
champion in this division, unfortunately for everybody, is Canelo Alvarez. So yeah. Speaking of that, though, the last person I want to talk about is actually fighting Canelo, and that is Mr. Edgar Berlanga. Nate, is he a contender or a pretender?
I'm gonna go pretender for a lot of the same reasons as Pacheco and Mbilli. Like he should be, someone like a Caleb Plant or Andre would have been like perfect. And if he beats one of those two guys, I'll shut up. I'll say he earned the fight. But it's just tough, especially in a division that had David Morrell and David Benavidez, and especially for I mean Canelo had he's gonna get stripped of the IBF belt once he fights Berlanga. But I feel like fighting for the undisputed belt is something that should be prestigious. Like you should have to like earn that right. And like Berlanga just hasn't done that. You look at like Benavidez, he beat Caleb Plant, he beat Andrade. He's a form like he used to have a belt. Granted, past transgressions led to him losing it, but you can't like hold that over him forever. He's come back and he's beating everybody you put in front of him. Like he's the one who's earned a shot to fight for all of the belts at 168. But Canelo saying like, "Oh, he's a weight bully." all that stuff. I mean, last I checked, David Benavidez didn't make his own weight class. Like he didn't fight like Amir Khan. You know, he didn't fight a champion that was at 154 and had him come up to 168. So I mean, that's not a weight bully. I mean, if anything, Canelo's a weight bully. You know, so but yeah, I mean, Berlanga, his ceiling maybe eventually he becomes champion, but he definitely hasn't earned the right to fight for it yet. You know, he's definitely a win or two away, but I don't know at this point. You know, this is it's because of Mexico versus Puerto Rico. That's really what earned him the shot more than anything in his body of work.
I hear that all. I've been hearing that a lot lately. Is that this is a Mexico? This is continues the Mexico versus Puerto Rico rivalry. It's more like Mexico versus New York, because that man is as Puerto Rican at this point as
That's me.
as you. Like I'm just saying, like he's born from New York. I get it, comes from Mexican or not Mexican Puerto Rican blood, but like,
Hmm.
is it really a true Mexico versus Puerto Rico clash? Is it
And if
really?
it sells tickets, it does. It does. I mean, it's
It is what it
historically
is.
one of
It
the
is
better
what it
rivalries
is.
in boxing.
I mean, listen, I think Edgar Berlanga is an exciting name. I think for people, if you want seats and tickets, he is an exciting name. The only thing is like I don't think his ceiling is as high as you said. Like he may win a world title. I'm not sure if he's shown that with me. Like
Yeah,
one of the big issues I think was with his fight against Steve Rolls. And I think that's the
yeah.
fight where, Rolls was kind of touching him up and Berlanga bit him. Is that the one where he bit him?
Yeah, that might have been that, or it might have been a different fight. But either way, it
Well,
was like after,
it
after his like
was
16 fight knockout
in,
streak, his
in
first round
between
knockout streak.
that, he bit somebody. But in the fight against Steve Rolls, Rolls who got knocked out by Triple G, he showed it was one of his better performances in the later stages of his career against this up and coming guy who's supposed to be the next big thing.
Mhm.
Um, if Berlanga, I think Berlanga in this fight against Canelo, he needs to really prove a lot of things. He needs to prove that he can really. I think the biggest thing he needs to be able to fight defensively. One, because if you look at all his fights, he's coming forward. He really doesn't know how. He's really trying to control the action. But the problem is when you fight a guy who's more dominant in that aspect, are you going to really be able to outmuscle them? Because Canelo is, probably the best when it comes to inside fighting, especially in at 168, but probably the best in boxing when it comes to head to head. So is Edgar Berlanga going to be able to withstand that? Is his punch resistance good? I haven't seen that yet. The only time I've seen punch resistance is when he got knocked down on that Deontay Wilder Tyson Fury undercard.
Yeah, by Caceres, the guy that Iglesias freaking wiped out in the
Exactly.
first round.
So we have to really see that. But, enough with that. We'll see what happens on Mexican Independence Day weekend. Obviously, we're going to be watching the fight. Are we excited? I don't know if I'm
Yeah, we'll,
excited,
we'll
but
definitely watch.
I'll definitely watch it because obviously, if Canelo wins, I'm going to be like, well, he added another guy to his legacy. But, that's enough with contender pretender. Since we're on the topic of 168, though, what are the best fights to make at super middleweight? But there is a caveat. You can't use Canelo, David Benavidez, or David Morrell in these fantasy matchups. We're going to have two each. We're just going to say two, and we're going to kind of explain it, and then we'll go from there. So, Nate, the floor is yours. You can say yours, and then we'll go back to
I'll
mine.
go. I'll go. Ooh, I think number one for me would be Osleys Iglesias versus Jaime Munguia. I think
Ooh.
that'd be a sick fight, action-packed fight. And we'll see. I mean, Munguia is going to give as good as he gets from Iglesias. I think that would be such an entertaining fight to watch. And that'd be maybe I don't know if Iglesias would take that fight next. I mean, Munguia's got a tough fight. Guy slipping, his name's slipping my mind. But Munguia's next fight should be pretty tough too. I think
Oh,
another guy
Eric
that's
Banzian?
promoted. Yeah, isn't he also promoted by Eye of
Yeah,
the
he's
Tiger?
he's promoted with Eye of the
That's
Tiger
fine.
too. He's a killer. I think that's going to be a tough fight for Mungia. I like
Yeah,
that one.
but
I like that
it's
one.
also kind of like if those promoters can work for that fight, then maybe Osleys Iglesias versus Munguia isn't as far off as it may seem.
Yeah,
I don't know.
because here's the thing, like Mungia. versus Banzignan is a fight where I didn't think Munguia would take that. For the longest time, people were saying Jaime was like ducking the big fights. You know what I mean?
He was definitely protected for a little bit when he was at 160, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. But like once, like literally, like he signs with Top Rank, and that's the first fight they give him. You know, that is a
Yeah,
entertaining
no.
fight. I'm actually excited for that fight because Eric
Mhm.
Banzignan, he's a guy who also can hit really hard. That's a guy who can hit really hard. So
Yeah.
I kind of want to see. And Munguia always in an exciting fight,
Always in fun fights. Yeah.
always in fun fights. So I think that's going to be a fun fight, possibly a fight of the year.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go off of that. So I'm gonna continue with Osleys Iglesias because I very impressed with him. And this might not happen, but it's something that I do want to see. Let's go number 2 versus number 3 in the Ring Magazine rankings. Let's go Osleys Iglesias versus Christian Mbilli. Two of Eye of the Tiger's top fighters. I think that fight right there really proves who is the second best super middleweight in the world and potentially the next contender for Canelo's unified titles. Christian Mbilli, obviously a physically strong fighter, someone who tries to impose his will on you. And Osleys Iglesias, we talked about it, a guy who has deceivingly powerful hands, someone who's actually technical, comes from the Cuban style. I think this would be an interesting fight, and I think obviously if when it comes to boxing in Canada, that could probably sell pay-per-views for them because that is their
Mhm.
two top cash cows, especially at 168. So that right there, I think, is my best fight to make at 168.
Yeah. It would be logical for that fight to be next. I hope it would be next. I mean, there's nothing that should really get in the way for it. They have the same promoters. But I feel like, for them, it's like, well, we could potentially get two big paydays, with given the state at 168. So I wouldn't be surprised if they try to keep them away to try and like cash out on both of them, or not cash out. You know what I mean? Get two big paydays
Yeah, cash out
off
both of
both of
them.
them, rather than them just can't like one cancels out the other.
Yeah. So Nate, what is your second fight at 168?
My second fight, I went with Edgar Berlanga versus Caleb Plant. Um, just because I feel like that for Berlanga, that would have been a logical next step, and just like the bad blood that they have already. You see them going back and forth at the press conference and stuff like that. So I feel like the build up to that fight would be fun, and it'd be a good test for both of them. For Plant to see. I mean, he hasn't ducked any smoke from anyone. He fought Canelo, he fought David Benavidez, and he held his own against both of them. So if Berlanga were to fight Caleb Plant and get an impressive win, like that would have shut everybody up. No one would be complaining about this fight. But that fight could still happen afterward. So we'll see. But yeah, that would be. I had that as my second fight.
Yeah, I definitely think that would be a good fight, especially after like the press conference and you see them talking trash. I think that
Hmm.
would be an interesting fight. Now, what's kind of crazy is that our two fights, we have very similar fights, very similar fighters, very similar storylines. So my second fight at 168 that I want to see is Caleb Plant versus Jamal Charlo. And
Okay, that's a good fight.
the sole reason is because of that bitch slap backstage.
Oh,
I can't believe that Caleb Plant really slapped the taste buds out of Jamal Charlo's mouth, bro. That thing was kind of crazy. It looked like an actual hook. I thought he punched him for a second. I thought he got a
yeah.
quick sneak in there,
That's
but
not the first time he's tried that. I think he tried.
no,
Canelo got out of the way.
the first time someone had really good head movement. So,
Yeah.
but this time he caught him clean. I think though, like if we're being honest, when it comes to Jamal Charlo, when he's on, he is a smart fighter. He is one of the most, I would say one of the most solid boxers in boxing. I mean, prime Charlo from the late 2010s knew how to knew how to gauge range, knew how to fight with distance, and knew how to win on points.
He's
Um,
solid power too.
Solid power, gave everybody that he fought a tough fight. I mean, he beat Sergey Derenchenko. He probably beat Sergey Derenchenko the most convincing out of all of
Yeah,
his opponents.
easily the most impressive one over
You know,
Derevchenko.
I think that Jamal Charlo, if he's on, he's had a lot of issues lately. We hopefully he gets those through. But when he's on, he is a problem for anybody. The only problem is he's been inactive. So how fresh or how rusty, how close of the best version are we going to get of Jamal? And Caleb Plant, obviously, we know like he's not afraid to fight anybody. Again, another slick boxer, but somebody who we know has some power too. I mean, just look at what he did to what was it, Andre Durrell or Anthony?
Anthony Durrell.
Anthony Durrell. He did it to Anthony Durrell. You know that check
Oh,
hook,
well, not
folded him
gonna be your candidate.
folded him like an omelet. You know what I mean? And he's a tough guy too. He's not afraid to get into a fight. So that fight, especially with what happened backstage, that fight could sell tickets. You know what I mean? Maybe not. It might not be a headlining fight for pay per
No,
view.
they would. I think PBC would have that headline at pay-per-view.
Oh, probably. But like, if we're talking logically, money wise,
Yeah.
that would be like a co-main event on a card.
Mm-hmm.
But like that right there, that's a fight I really want to see. And technically, they're both not in the rankings, so like it would be an even matchup.
Yeah,
But
I'd like to see Jamal fight one more.
yeah, and Nate, because you're my boy, if you have one more fight at 168, let me know.
No, I did. We talked about it earlier. Boo Boo versus Mbilli. That was the one fight, the third fight that I had. So yeah, I think that would just for Mbilli, that'd be a good step up against a former champion, and for Boo Boo, if he can get that, if Andre can get that win, he's back in the discussion at 168.
Yeah, I definitely think. I mean, you know me. I'm a big fan of Demetrius Andrade. So I mean, him getting a big fight is all I ever want. Is him getting a big fight. I mean, for me, I think Boo Boo versus Billy is a good test for both of them. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Literally, the joke about Demetrius Andrade was that he was the 40-year-old prospect.
Yeah,
And, you know, he finally broke that with David Benavidez, but the problem is he didn't end up with a win. So
yeah,
it pretty much solidified everybody's viewpoint of Demetrius Andrade. That being said, I think that he would still be a tough test for Billy. I think he would give him some different angles. He'd be a more unorthodox style than what Billy is used to. That would be a great fight. And then for me, I'll just say it real quick. I don't have to really go into detail. But Diego Pacheco versus Eric Banzanian, that's a fight where I think a contrast in styles. You have a guy in Banzanian who's a tough power puncher who can be really aggressive, but very calculated against a guy in Diego Pacheco who fights off his jab, fights with he has really good footwork, and he's more comfortable fighting at a distance, but doesn't mind getting on the inside every so often. So I think a fight between them personally would be an interesting one to me.
for sure. Yeah, I think. I mean, if Pacheco can get past this fight against Sulecki, and then if Bazian gets past Monkey, I don't know. Maybe Baz will be looking to aim a little higher. I don't know, just because Pacheco's still on his way up, But we'll see. I mean, that would be a really good fight as well.
Yeah, but honestly, I mean, I think we hit on everything, Nate. I think we hit on everything. One last thing I want to say though. I think the biggest thing we should talk about. Floyd Mayweather is fighting this weekend, technically, in an exhibition.
Yeah,
Right?
that
So
he is.
he's fighting against John Gotti, the rematch that everybody, quote unquote, wanted. So I want to ask you this question. What are your top three Floyd Mayweather wins?
Top three. Number one, I'll go Diego Corrales because they're both undefeated at the time, and that fight was really viewed as a pick'em at the time. I remember, I think I read something, or my dad was told me about it. Shout out to my dad; he's the one who really got me into boxing. But like the Diego Corrales Floyd Mayweather fight, like that was like a pick'em. It was like the Ring magazine did some type where they pulled like the writers, and it was like 18-15 Mayweather, and then he just comes out and beats the brakes off of Corrales. And I mean that's just for me like that's a true test of someone. Like in a close fight, like how do you or a fight that's expected to be close, like how do you perform? And he just beat the just dominated from the opening bell and stopped Corrales in a fight that was expected to be back and forth and where they legitimately thought Corrales could win. Number two, I went Jose Luis Castillo too, just because after the first, Many people thought Mayweather lost the first fight. No controversy, not much controversy in the second fight. He came out and outboxed him. And the third fight, oh, I was very torn on this third fight, but I went with the win over Canelo. Just because
Oh
the whole build up, how like
Oh my
Canelo was
gosh.
built.
No. This is a terrible list. I'm telling you right now, this is a
Yeah,
terrible
I don't
list.
know.
This is
I
a
was
terrible
torn
list.
between
Oh my
him.
gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay,
Okay,
okay.
we're gonna have to edit this out now. But I mean, I was close. I mean, there's Pacquiao, there's Mosley, there's De La Hoya. Like, there's a whole bunch of names that could have been. I don't know. I made this a list at like
Oh
last
my
night.
gosh. Okay, okay, okay.
Wait, what's your
So,
list? What's your,
okay, you want to hear my list? All right.
please?
I got this. Ready? So first, number 3, I think the third most one of the most impressive wins I think in boxing history, one of the most one-sided wins, and one of the most coming out parties as a pay-per-view star was Floyd Mayweather stopping Arturo Gatti, Thunder and Lightning. This was when Floyd Mayweather was still a B-side fighter. You have to think about that. And he went in Gotti's hometown of New Jersey and dominated. He straight dominated him for what, 6 rounds? They had to stop it because Gotti
Yeah, no, there
died.
you got them. Yeah.
Literally domination. And it was, you want to know what's crazy? It was my first time watching Floyd Mayweather live. That's my first time. And,
That's
and
super
seeing how
impressive.
dominant he was, seeing how lightning fast Pretty Boy was, you can't tell me that there was another performance that was any better. But there was 2 more. Now, I think I have to agree with you on one, and it's the Diego Corrales performance because you know we were too young. We were a little young to
Yeah,
be.
we were young.
We
Yeah,
were young to
little
watch it live,
whippersnappers.
but us being trying to be boxing historians, a lot of people did have those guys as the top. What was it? Lightweights at the time? Was it
I believe they
lightweight?
fought at 130.
130. The top 130 pounders of at the time, and it was a pick'em fight. I mean, I remember just reading. I'm just gonna say I remember, but like videos,
Yeah,
talking about like yo, like this was a big fight, and there was at one point Floyd knocked him down 4 times in a round, I think.
yeah. No, I think he dropped him to three, twice in the 10th. Yeah, he dropped him 5 times.
Exactly. You want to know something? That's like, for a fight that was supposed to be close, he really did dominate Diego Corrales. And honestly, like again, I think that fight proved that he was a pound for pound fighter. Like he was a
Hmm.
top pound for pound fighter. That fight right there proved that. And then number 1, the most impressive win to me was when he beat Oscar De La Hoya in arguably one of the greatest fights of all time. I
Oh,
mean,
greatest fights of all time. I don't know about
yes, yes. No, you got to think about it. You got to think about
that.
context.
Okay.
You got to think about, if you think about it as if you look at it, that fight was one of the best of all time. Think about it, like
Mm,
Oscar's aggression, Oscar's grittiness compared to Floyd's smarts and his defensive prowess. That fight was one of the most exciting for
yeah,
any boxing fan. It gave casuals something. They were like, "Oh, did Floyd finally lose?" Like it was
yeah,
something that kept you on the edge of your seat for 12 rounds. So it is one of the greatest fights of all time. But
yeah.
the
Well,
reason, not only that, but the reason why it's number 1 for me is because this was Floyd Money Mayweather's home or coming out party as the top
yeah,
pay-per-view guy. This was the official changing of the guards because we already knew that Oscar De La Hoya was the cash cow in boxing at the time, and nobody was going to deny that. But Floyd Mayweather was already coming up, and this fight right here was one, he promoted it like no other. I mean, that's when 24/7 started. He started 24/7, and he promoted it like no other, and he ended up backing up every trash talk that he said. It was a split decision, but it was a win at that. And ever since then, he changed the course of boxing history, not only for, kind of like the history books, but the way that business is run in boxing. So
hmm,
for that is number 1. I mean, it's a win that changed the culture of boxing.
that I can't deny. It really cemented himself as the villain too. Like that was when I'm like, oh, I want to see him lose, and then he never lost.
Yeah, I think we're about to get timed out in 1
Yeah,
second.
we go.
Oh,
We got
wait, we
20
didn't.
seconds.
Oh, let's
We
go.
got 20. I see. We got like 15 seconds on my screen.
Oh, snap. All right. Well, thank you
Yeah.
guys
So
for watching
thank
the
you for
first
listening. We
episode.
appreciate
Thank you
you.
guys. Please like, share, and subscribe. Our stuff is right here. Follow us at YouTube at The Split Decision.
Please,
Follow us
please.
on Instagram at The Split Decision. Follow my boy Nate on Instagram at Nate_Marrero. Follow him on X, though. He's very popular on X. But
Oh,
thank you guys for watching the first episode. We're going to be back for episode number 2 next week. I'm Alyas Blanco. That's Nate Marrero. And we're out.
see you.